I should have known Nathan would overreact. That's what he always did. Took everything too seriously, made mountains out of molehills. But walking out of my birthday party, leaving me there with 60 guests and a 5-tier cake? That was dramatic even for him. My name is Victoria, and a year ago I gave my husband what I thought was a funny birthday gift. A black designer t-shirt with "Divorced" printed on it in white letters. Just a joke. A little edgy humor to lighten up the party. Instead, it became the moment I lost everything. I didn't know a $50 t-shirt would cost me a 4-year marriage, my career, and my reputation, but here we are. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the party, Nathan's grand gesture that was supposed to prove how much he loved me. He'd been planning it for months, dropping hints about the perfect venue and the special surprise he had in store. Classic Nathan, always trying too hard, always needing validation for every little thing he did. The rooftop venue was admittedly gorgeous. I'll give him that. The city skyline glittered behind us, Champagne Tower catching the light from the string lights he'd paid extra for. 60 of our closest friends and family, all dressed up, all there to celebrate me. Nathan stood by the entrance in his best suit, the one I'd picked out for him because left to his own devices, he'd have worn something from 5 years ago. "You look beautiful," he said when I arrived, that puppy dog look in his eyes that used to be endearing but had become suffocating. Always watching me, always waiting for approval, always so needy. The party was in full swing when I decided to give my toast. I'd had a few glasses of champagne, feeling good, feeling powerful. I grabbed the microphone and looked out at the crowd. This was my moment, my night. "I want to thank someone special," I began, raising my glass. "Someone who's been my rock these past few months." I saw Nathan straighten up, that eager smile spreading across his face. God, he was so predictable, always assuming everything was about him. "Damien Rivera," I continued, gesturing to my coworker who stood near the bar. "My guiding light through all the tough times at work, the restructuring, the late nights, the impossible deadlines. I couldn't have done it without you." Damien raised his glass back, that confident smile that made him so good in client meetings. He understood ambition. He understood what it took to succeed. Unlike Nathan, who'd turned down promotion after promotion because it would mean less time at home. The crowd clapped politely, and I saw the confusion on Nathan's face, the hurt, but also that familiar look of resignation, like he was used to being overlooked. It irritated me. Why couldn't he be confident for once? Why did he always have to be the victim? That's when I decided to give him his gift. The t-shirt had been Damien's idea, actually. We'd been working late one night, just the two of us in his office, sharing a bottle of wine he kept in his desk drawer. His hand had found my knee as we laughed about our marriages. "You know what would be hilarious?" he'd said, showing me his phone. "There's this designer brand that makes statement pieces. Look at this one." The "Divorced" shirt had made me laugh so hard I'd spilled wine on his couch. It was perfect. The kind of thing that showed we could laugh about the state of our marriage instead of having another one of Nathan's serious talks about where we're headed. "You should get it," Damien had said, his hand moving higher on my thigh. "Shake things up a little." I'd ordered it that night, using Nathan's credit card. The irony of that didn't hit me until much later. "And for my husband," I said into the microphone, producing the gift bag with a flourish, "a little something to commemorate 4 years of marriage." The crowd chuckled, anticipating something sweet. Nathan's face lit up again. Honestly, the man was like a golden retriever. He opened the bag, pulled out the shirt, and held it up. The laughter started scattered, then grew. People got it. It was funny. Unexpected, bold. The kind of thing that showed we were a modern couple who could joke about divorce statistics and marriage troubles. But Nathan just stood there, staring at the shirt like it was a dead animal. His face went through about 10 different emotions. Confusion, hurt, anger, and finally something I'd never seen before. Resolution. Without a word, He set the bag down and reached into his pocket. For 1 second, I thought he was going to play along, maybe pull out a matching shirt or make a joke back. Instead, he pulled out a small box and set it on the table next to the cake. A jewelry box. Cartier from the look of it. Then he turned and walked out. The party went silent. 60 people staring at me, waiting for an explanation. I laughed, trying to salvage the moment. "Drama queen," I said, waving my hand dismissively. "He'll be back." But he wasn't. 5 minutes passed, then 10. I kept drinking, kept mingling, but people were starting to whisper. Damien came over, put his hand on my shoulder. "Should someone go after him?" he asked. "He's fine," I insisted. "This is what he does, makes everything about him." But my hands were shaking as I opened the Cartier box. Inside was a gold bracelet, delicate and expensive. The kind of thing I'd mentioned wanting months ago, probably in passing. Of course, Nathan remembered. He remembered everything, filed it all away like some kind of relationship accountant. That's when my phone started ringing. Nathan's name on the screen. Finally, I thought. He's ready to apologize for his little tantrum. I let it ring a few times, let him sweat, then declined the call. He called again immediately, and again. By the time I finally decided to answer, I had 15 missed calls. But he didn't pick up. It just rang and rang until his voicemail clicked on. His voice steady and professional. "Hi, you've reached Nathan. Leave a message." I hung up and called again. Same thing. That's when I realized he'd blocked me. After calling 15 times, he'd blocked my number. The party fizzled out after that. People made excuses, said early goodbyes. Damien offered to drive me home, but I said I'd take an Uber. I needed to think, to figure out what the hell had just happened. By the time I got home, I'd called Nathan 157 times. I know because my phone kept track, showed me the number like some kind of shameful scoreboard. 157 attempts to reach my husband, and not one answered. The apartment was dark when I walked in. Nathan's car wasn't in his usual spot. I flicked on the lights, still in my party dress, and noticed immediately what was missing. His coffee mug from the kitchen counter, his jacket from the hook by the door. Small things, but their absence felt huge. I poured myself wine and sat on the couch, still calling, still getting voicemail. Where the hell was he? This was so typical. I make one joke and he turns it into some massive drama. He was probably at his friend Theodore's place, sulking, waiting for me to come grovel. Well, I wasn't going to. He'd embarrassed me in front of everyone. Who walks out of their wife's birthday party? Who makes a scene like that over a joke gift? I called Theodore. No answer. I called Nathan's brother. Nothing. It was like he'd vanished and taken everyone with him. The wine helped me sleep, but I woke up at 3 a.m. with a pounding headache and a sick feeling in my stomach. Nathan's side of the bed was still empty, still cold. That's when I started to panic. What if something had happened? What if he'd gotten into an accident driving angry? I called hospitals, police stations, anywhere I could think of. No one had seen him. By morning, I was exhausted and furious. The apartment felt different without his presence. Quieter, but not in a good way. In an empty way. I made coffee in the machine he'd bought, the expensive one he'd researched for weeks before purchasing. It tasted bitter. I didn't go to work. Couldn't face Damien and the questions. Instead, I sat in my pajamas, refreshing my phone, waiting for Nathan to break. He always broke first, always came back, apologizing for overreacting, asking how he could make it better. But the hours ticked by, and nothing. 157 calls had turned into 200, then 300. My texts went from angry to pleading to desperate. Where are you? This isn't funny anymore. I'm sorry about the shirt. It was just a joke. Please come home. I'm worried about you. Nathan, please. 3 days later, a courier arrived with an envelope, legal documents, divorce papers, already filled out, with Nathan's signature at the bottom. The date showed he'd filed them the day after the party. I stood in my doorway in my robe, holding papers that reduced 4 years of marriage to asset division and irreconcilable differences. The courier was already walking away, his job done. That's when I noticed something else in the envelope. Security footage from our building's garage, time-stamped from the night of the party. A USB drive with a note. Your husband asked me to include this. Building management. I plugged it into my laptop with shaking hands. The grainy footage showed Nathan's car pulling into the garage at 11:47 p.m. He sat there for 23 minutes. I know because I watched every second, his head in his hands. Then he got out, walked to the trunk and pulled out a suitcase I hadn't even noticed was missing. He'd packed before the party. He'd known he might need to leave. The last frame showed him driving away at 12:10 a.m., his brake lights disappearing into the dark. That's when it hit me. He wasn't coming back. This wasn't a tantrum or a dramatic gesture. Nathan had actually left me. Over a t-shirt. Over a joke. I called Clara Mendez, the lawyer listed on the papers. She was cold, professional, wouldn't tell me where Nathan was. My client wishes to proceed with a quiet, amicable divorce, she said. He's willing to let you keep the apartment and asks only for his personal belongings and a fair division of shared assets. I don't want a divorce, I said, my voice cracking. I want to talk to my husband. I'm afraid that's not possible. All communication needs to go through me now. She hung up, and I threw my phone across the room. It hit the wall, the screen cracking into a spider web of lines. Damien came by that evening with takeout and wine. He sat on my couch, our couch, Nathan's and mine, and tried to comfort me. He'll come around, he said, but even he didn't sound convinced. The guy's crazy about you. Was, I corrected. Was crazy about me. We drank the wine, and Damien told me about the drama at work. The restructuring had hit hard. Layoffs were coming. That promotion I'd been gunning for, on hold indefinitely. Maybe it's for the best, he said, not meeting my eyes. Fresh start and all that. After he left, I sat in the dark apartment thinking about Nathan, about all the dinners he'd cooked while I worked late, the vacations he'd skipped so I could take that conference in Miami, the promotion he'd turned down because I'd said I needed him home more. I'd thought he was weak for always giving in. Now I wondered if maybe he'd just loved me more than I'd loved him. The divorce proceeded without me ever seeing Nathan again. Clara handled everything with ruthless efficiency. I kept the apartment, but had to buy out Nathan's half with savings I'd earmarked for other things. The joint accounts were split, the car payments divided, 4 years untangled in a matter of weeks. I threw myself into work, determined to get that promotion. If Nathan wanted to throw away our marriage over a joke, fine. I'd show him what he was missing. I'd become the success I was meant to be. But work wasn't the same. The restructuring hit, and Damien was laid off in the first wave. He cleared out his desk without saying goodbye, just sent a text. Good luck, V. You'll need it. What did that mean? I found out soon enough. Without Damien running interference, my own position became precarious. The late nights I'd credited to him were suddenly questioned. The projects he'd guided me through fell apart without his input. My boss called me in 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized. We're making some changes, she said, not unkindly, but not warmly either. Your position is being eliminated. Is this about Damien? I asked, my voice sharp. Because nothing happened. This is about your performance, she cut me off. Or rather, the lack thereof without Mr. Rivera carrying your projects. She slid a folder across the desk. These are your actual contributions versus what you claimed in meetings. HR has been investigating for weeks. I opened the folder with numb fingers. Email after email showing Damien doing the work while I took credit. Timestamps proving I'd been at long lunches while claiming to be in strategy sessions. A particularly damning message where I'd asked him to cover for me with Peterson while I get my nails done. You have an hour to clear out your desk, she said. Security will escort you. I sat there in my power suit, the one Nathan used to say made me look like a CEO, and felt everything crumbling. The job I'd prioritized over my marriage, the career I'd thought was worth more than Nathan's feelings, gone. The apartment felt even emptier after that. I started a podcast about women in business, thinking I could parlay my experience into something new. But my first episode, about maintaining work-life balance, was met with brutal comments. Maybe focus on maintaining your marriage first. Is this the woman who gave her husband a divorce t-shirt? Hard to take advice from someone who crashed and burned so publicly. How did they know? I realized with growing horror that someone at the party must have talked. The story was out there, spreading through our social circles and beyond. I was becoming a cautionary tale. I tried reaching out to Nathan one more time, found out through mutual friends that he was doing well, really well. He'd thrown himself into work, gotten the promotions he'd previously turned down. He was speaking at business seminars, of all things, had some blog that was gaining traction. I found it late one night, 3 glasses of wine deep. 157 missed calls. That title punched me in the stomach harder than any insult ever could. I read his first post about standing at a party holding a shirt that said divorced while his wife thanked another man, about walking out and taking his life back. The comments were brutal. She sounds narcissistic. Good for you for leaving. Some people don't know what they have until it's gone. He never used my name, but people figured it out. The story spread beyond our circles, beyond our city. I became the wife in his narrative, the villain in his comeback story. 6 months after the divorce, I was broke. The apartment payments without Nathan's income were crushing. The job search was going nowhere. Apparently, being internet infamous for destroying your marriage wasn't great for professional prospects. The podcast had 12 listeners on a good day. I sold the Cartier bracelet, the one Nathan had bought for my birthday, left on the table as his final gift. It hurt to let it go, but rent was due, and pride doesn't pay bills. That's when I decided to find him. Not to win him back, that ship had sailed, but to ask for help. To see if there was anything left of the man who used to make me coffee every morning. I took the train to his new city, found his building through some careful social media stalking. I stood outside in the rain, no umbrella, watching the windows, and trying to work up the courage to ring his bell. When he opened the door, I barely recognized him. He looked good, better than good, stronger, leaner, with a confidence I'd never seen before. The Nathan I'd known would have fumbled, maybe invited me in immediately. This Nathan just stood there, waiting. "Can I come in?" I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. He stepped aside without a word. The apartment was nice, really nice. Modern furniture, clean lines, a guitar in the corner I didn't know he played. There was a vision board on the wall covered with plans and goals. One pin said Dubai. Another said Milan. My ex-husband was planning international trips while I couldn't afford groceries. "I miss you," I said, the words tumbling out. "We were good together." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and what he said next cut deeper than any angry words could have. "No, I was good. You were lucky." The truth of it hit like a physical blow. He was right. I'd been lucky. Lucky to have someone who cooked dinner every night, who remembered what jewelry I wanted, who turned down opportunities to be there for me. And I'd thrown it away for a laugh, for Damien's approval, for the image of being a power couple who could joke about divorce. I broke down then, sobbed in his living room while he stood there, unmoved. I told him everything. The job loss, Damien's abandonment, the failed podcast, the money troubles, how I'd realized too late what I'd lost. "I need you," I said, looking up at him through tears, but he just shook his head. "You didn't need me when you handed me that shirt. You didn't need me when you thanked Damien instead of me. You don't get to need me now." He was right. I'd needed him to pay for the party, plan the details, be the stable one while I shined. But I hadn't needed him as a person, as a partner. I'd needed what he provided, not who he was. I left his apartment and walked back into the rain. No dramatic exit, no slamming doors, just the quiet end of what had already been over for a year. A month later, I saw a video of him speaking at some conference in Europe. He looked comfortable on stage, telling his story to hundreds of people. He mentioned the t-shirt, the 157 calls, the moment he chose himself over someone who didn't value him. The audience applauded when he finished, and I noticed he was wearing a black shirt with "rebuilt" on it. The irony wasn't lost on me. My joke gift had become his brand. My mockery of our marriage had launched his new life. I live in a studio apartment now, working retail to make ends meet. It's honest work, even if it's not what I imagined for myself. Sometimes customers recognize me. "Aren't you the divorced t-shirt woman?" And I just smile and ring up their purchases. Nathan's blog turned into a book. I saw it at the store last week. Walking Away, a guide to rebuilding after betrayal. His author photo showed him confident and centered, nothing like the man who used to ask permission before making plans. I bought it, read it in one sitting on my pull-out couch. He was generous, never naming me directly, but honest about the pain I'd caused. But the internet doesn't need names. Just screenshots, gossip, and a t-shirt. About how the t-shirt wasn't really the problem. It was years of being taken for granted, of being treated like a supporting character in his own marriage. There's a chapter called "The Orchids" that made me sob. He wrote about the morning of the party, how the flowers I'd mentioned once at someone else's wedding had been delayed, how he'd called 14 different suppliers, paid $3,000 to have them flown in from another city, all because 2 years earlier I'd said they were my dream flowers. He wrote about watching me dismiss them that night, too busy thanking another man to notice the lengths he'd gone to. "She never asked how I managed to get Thai orchids in December," he wrote. "She never noticed they were the exact variety from the photo she'd saved on her phone. Love is in the details, but so is indifference. That night, I finally understood which one I'd been receiving." There's a chapter about the night I showed up at his apartment. He writes about how he felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just nothing. "The opposite of love isn't hate," he wrote. "It's indifference." And that's what I'd earned through years of treating his love like an entitlement rather than a gift. I still have the divorced shirt. Kept it all this time, though I'm not sure why. Sometimes I take it out and look at it. This stupid piece of designer cotton that cost me everything. $40 plus shipping for a joke that wasn't funny. The most expensive shirt in history. Last month I saw Nathan's wife on Instagram. Someone had tagged her in a photo from one of his speaking events. She's beautiful in an understated way, the opposite of me. In the photo, she's looking at him like he is a king while he's on stage. Her caption was simple: "Proud of this one, at Nathan Rebuilt." I clicked through to her profile against my better judgment. Pictures of them traveling: Dubai, Milan, Tokyo. A shot of her reading his book on a beach in Thailand. Another of him cooking dinner in their kitchen, laughing at something off camera. The kitchen had orchids on the counter. White ones, like the ones he'd flown in for my party. One photo stopped me cold. Their wedding. A simple ceremony on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Nathan in a suit that actually fit him properly, looking at her the way he used to look at me before I killed that look one dismissive comment at a time. The caption, 2 years ago today, I married the man who sees me as his equal, not his audience. I threw my phone across the room and cried until my neighbors complained about the noise. The police knocked at my door that night. Noise complaint. I almost laughed. Imagine calling the cops over heartbreak. My phone rings sometimes, not 157 times, just once or twice, and I always hope it might be Nathan. But it never is. He's in Dubai now, according to his social media, speaking at another conference, living the life he never could have with me because I would have complained about the flight time or insisted he needed to prioritize my career instead. The truth is, I didn't just lose a husband that night. I lost the best thing that ever happened to me. I just didn't know it until he was gone, rebuilt into someone who no longer needed my approval or validation. They say you don't know what you have until it's gone, but I think it's worse than that. I think sometimes you know exactly what you have, someone loyal, supportive, loving, and you destroy it anyway because you think you deserve better, because you think their quiet love is worth less than public attention and workplace flirtation. Nathan gave me exactly what I asked for that night. I handed him a shirt that said "divorced," and he made it reality. The joke was on me all along. I just took a year to get it, and by then it was far too late to laugh. He rebuilt from rubble. I still live in it. And somewhere between his 157 missed calls and my countless regrets, I learned the hardest truth of all. Some gifts you can't take back, and some jokes end up costing you everything.